a holiday, a day that I love to celebrate and get dressed up for and all that. I got my red, white, and blue. If you're watching on Facebook, I got the flag here, wore the right colors. I wear these colors a lot anyway, okay? That's just me, all right? And we got those colors here in our state, the beautiful red, white, and blue, but we have been busy in our work this year. I'm going to tell you what. And so I want to first say thank you. We ended our fiscal year yesterday in a very strong manner, okay? We finished strong. We finished where we needed to and even put ourselves in a position to be strong moving for the second half of the year. Y'all have heard me talk a lot about that. We go July 1st to June 30th. So I was up late last night, still communicating with some of our supporters, putting out some encouragement. We did have some last-minute gifts come out very late last night. So thank you, everyone, first of all, for continuing to invest in the work that we do at Texas Values. And with our team of 12 people, can't say enough about how grateful we are. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the coming weeks, kind of where we ended up and where we're headed now, and some great events and opportunities and projects we have planned because of your investment in our nonprofit work. But I do want to talk about the issues that have been going on in our state. We had a huge Supreme Court case on Monday. Very disappointed, to say the least, on how that came out. And it's, it was a life issue, an abortion-related issue, but it wasn't a chance to overturn Roe versus Wade. This should have been an easy decision for the Supreme Court to get right, but they got it wrong. There's no question. And here we have, again, Chief Justice Roberts making things very difficult on a very simple case. And I'll talk a little bit more about that because we wrote a brief in this case and why that means we need to dig in a little bit more and do the work that we do. But a lot on the issues that we care about on religious freedom and others. And someone who knows a lot about these issues as we now move a lot more into the election season. We got early voting already starting in Texas. But someone who knows a lot about these issues and can speak to them and much more eloquently, I would say, probably than I am for sure, is Rick Green. And Rick Green is going to be our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Let me tell you a little bit about Rick if you're not familiar with him. He serves in a leadership role with Wall Builders and is the co-host with David Barton for the national daily radio program Wall Builders Live. He's also a former Texas state representative from the district where I live for quite some time. He's a national speaker, an author, a radio host. He had or still has a TV show going on with his family traveling across the country. And he is the founder and president of a wonderful program that really is designed a lot for young folks and students called Patriot Academy. Rick Green, welcome back to the Texas Values Report.
Jonathan, always good to be with you, man. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Well, what just not only an important, but an interesting and just a very unique place we are in our country, not just for this year, in the past few years, but, maybe in our lifetime and in a generation. And I know one of the things you talk about a lot and you have such depth on is the Constitution, America's founding. I want to talk a little bit about some of the things that are going on currently, but we got to start and remind people where this country is. We're about to celebrate our independence again, where this country started from. Talk to us a little bit about why we need to remember and never forget what our Constitution is about and why it came about.
It's probably one of the most important Independence Days we've ever had, certainly in my lifetime, because America is on trial right now. The history of America is on trial. The great debate that's happening in the streets, on social media, and most dinner tables is America a force for good? Is our history something we should be proud of or be embarrassed by, be ashamed of? Is America evil? I mean, there are a lot of things being thrown out. And unfortunately, the leftist Marxist mentality and philosophy has infiltrated our country in a big, big way. That poison's been taught on our college campuses for decades and even in our elementary education system for a while. So there's a big debate about should we even be celebrating our independence? Is the Declaration of Independence worth celebrating? Is our Constitution a good document? I never thought we would be at this point so quickly. but it's very important for us to look back and say, what's the true history of our nation? What were the principles we were founded upon? Have we become a more perfect union? Well, of course, we were never perfect in the beginning. We're not going to be perfect this side of heaven. But have we as a nation righted our wrongs as quickly as possible? And even when you look at our wrongs, what was the rest of the world like at the time? And just having context on those things is vitally important. But I think our Declaration is something that we don't teach enough of. That is the philosophy America was built upon. And so the Constitution, obviously we need to know the Constitution, but we have to know the slab, the foundation, before we can really know the home that was built on that slab. And the Declaration is what we celebrate this weekend.
No doubt. No, there's no doubt about that. And, I'm looking at a picture of you. You got this great smile. Every time I see you, you got a lot of enthusiasm. You're upbeat. You got a lot of energy. We may be similar in some ways in that regard. And I appreciate it, though, because I kind of feed off of that, right? And when I think about America, that's what I think a lot about, right? That optimism, that energy, that, that sense of, pressing forward, or when things come that are difficult, that we dig in and we work hard. We help each other, but that, but trying to have some joy. And some of it may come from you and I because of our Christian faith and what Christ tells us about these type of issues and why we have to continue to be hopeful and grateful for the things that we have, but not neglecting what's going on around us and recognizing there are a lot of challenging things that we're hearing, that we're seeing, that are of concern. And so you try to think back, well, what is it all about? And why does it all matter? And for us, we go back to the source, right? We go back to our Christian faith. We go back to the Bible. And when we talk about our country, we do go back to the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution and our founding documents and that history. And I've traveled in other parts of the world, not a whole lot, but a little bit. And, I think there's an interest. I hate to use the word envy, but there is a real interest in America because of that, because of our history and the freedom that seems to be so unique that we have to remind people, we individually, we get to control that. It's not the government, it's we, the people.
That's right. That's right. That's the beauty of the system itself, is that we have the ability to always become a better nation. And look, the reason we have joy, Jonathan, is because we know, truth sets you free. And once you've been set free, there's a joy. You're not angry all the time, even when you see bad things happening. There's a time for righteous anger, no question about that. But there's a joy in having truth. And I think that's when we talk about the Declaration, we talk about America's founding, we have to start with truth. I think that's what's being lost in the debate right now. There's so many lies that are being told about America and who we are, who our parents were, who the founders were. And if you don't start with truth, you're on sinking sand. So if you want to really understand who we are as a nation, you got to start with truth. In fact, the Declaration does that, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident. So you got to have truth first before you get to the rights that we all love, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But it starts with truth, and that's why organizations like Texas Values are so important. It's why it's so important for citizens to realize we can't just leave it up to Jonathan fighting at the legislature. We can't just leave it up to Rick out there doing Constitution classes. I have to do my part. Every citizen's got to start thinking like that. And maybe this weekend, Independence Day, can be an opportunity for people to say, hey, start acting like, act worthy, as Reagan would have said, act worthy of what's been given to me, and start participating in this system. Because just like you said, we the people are in charge. The only just powers of government come from the consent of the governed, as the Declaration says, and that means we've got to be involved giving or refusing our consent.
We're talking with Rick Green of Wall Builders. He has a daily radio show that he co-hosts with David Barton. And Rick, if there's any entity out there that goes really deep, particularly as it relates to the faith side of things about America's founding and America's history, it's Wall Builders. Talk to us a little bit about the entity. I mean, so many great resources. As a matter of fact, I have one of y'all's posters framed in our office. It's such a great poster. People don't know that I kind of got it for free, and I think I picked up, a frame somewhere along the way. It looks really nice. Okay, it's a great reminder, but I've been there before to the offices. And wow, the amount of resources and material that relate to these subjects is incredible. And there might be a lot of people thinking about it. I want to read more about this.
Yeah.
Talk to us a little bit about Wall Builders.
You bet. Even the name itself comes from the scripture in Nehemiah that says, "Arise and rebuild the walls that we may no longer be a reproach." And back then, if you didn't have those outer walls, you were run over. I mean, you were defeated. So you had to rebuild those walls for the nation to be strong again. And that's what David Barton, God put on his heart 30 years ago to say, hey, you've got to rebuild the foundations in America. You've got to bring back the truth of the timeless principles of liberty and the biblical foundations that will make a society free and prosperous and all those things. And so he started collecting founding documents, started going to the original source. He's now got the largest private collection of Founding Fathers documents. The museum is amazing. Not just documents now. He's got, muskets from the Revolution and cannonballs and all kinds of cool stuff. A lot of World War II stuff as well. But really had a huge impact on the debate about separation of church and state by simply going back to the original writings of the founders, what they actually said, what the Constitution actually says. And over the course of it took a couple of decades, but over the course of a couple of decades, changed the national debate on that issue because most people had bought into the idea that separation of church and state was in the Constitution, and so churches just kind of stepped out of the arena and stopped influencing the culture, stopped being salt and light because they bought into that idea. So I really credit David with leading the way on that. It was one of the most important things he ever did. And, of course, now we just take whatever the hot issue of the day is and we say, what's the biblical view on this? What's the historical context? And what does the Constitution say about it? And it helps you find the right policy position, if you will, on whatever the issue of the day is.
Well, look, y'all have some great material and so many great programs, too. We've been able to do some work with Tim along the way as well. And I can't say enough about it. And one of the things that, too, I hear David, and I'm sure you do, talk from time to time is the role of the people, but also religious people, the role that Christians have in this experiment, if you will, if we can still call it that, our constitutional republic and the issues of voting. We're in the middle of an incredibly important election year. I mean, every presidential election year is important, and it may be that you and I are just at a place in life where we can see it or it seems more important to us, but I think you ask a lot of people, and they would say the same thing with all the things going on, some of the conflict and the turmoil and the challenges, health and safety-wise. The elections are so important. And we know, you and I know, that churches and Christian people, they have a very important role to play in these elections.
Without the church truly being salt and light, the culture dies. I mean, it just does. You need the salt to preserve, but also to bring out the flavor. And when you put Christian values into the culture, you get true prosperity, true freedom, liberty for people that don't even believe the same way, right? But if Christian principles dominate, then those who don't even share those ideas get the benefit of that free society. So it is vital. The country would not have been founded the way it was without those Christian principles. Christian principles are what actually led to the Republican Party freeing the slaves. Christian principles are what MLK stood upon in the civil rights movement in the 60s, and the Declaration he quoted quite often from. And it's the Christian principles that have righted the wrongs in our own nation and around the world. It's the reason we led the way in so many different ways. So even right now, today, in the current debate, Christians have to recognize, look, you don't just put Christ in a box and say, well, it affects my family or affects my business, but it shouldn't affect politics. Wrong. It should affect how we vote. It should affect how we think about issues. And really, Christ called upon us to have a duty and a sense of responsibility. He said, occupy until I return. He said, render unto Caesar what is Caesar's. And in America, we are Caesar, just like you said at the beginning. I mean, if we the people are in charge, that makes us Caesar. And so if we're going to obey that biblical command, we got to say, okay, well, then what's the role of Caesar in America? Well, it's the role of a citizen to actually participate, to know our founding documents, to know who's running for office and go vote and be responsible, possibly to run for office, but to be engaged as a citizen. And then the last thing I'll say about that in terms of a Christian philosophy on this is the parable of the talents. We've been given this gift of freedom. Many have died so that we could be free. And just like in the parable of the talents, if we bury that talent, if we are not living the freedom that they died for, I think we're the wicked and slothful servant. I mean, that's what the parable says, that the master came back and said, you're a wicked and slothful servant because you were afraid to use what I gave you. Instead, we want to be like the other two servants that said, hey, I'm going to go work this. I'm going to live it. I'm going to invest in it. I'm going to multiply it. And freedom is very much the same way. If we will use it and invest in it and spread it and be, kind of like a Paul Revere, right? Let's be one of those people that's running out there and sharing with other people and getting them excited. Like you said, kind of catching our enthusiasm, Jonathan. The more that they take what we're talking about today and do it at the dinner table and in their own homes, the better chance we got of saving this country.
I certainly hope it spreads and multiplies. And, I mean, is it just me? Y'all are watching on Facebook and people that'll be listening. Does it sound like Rick has his own radio show? That's because he does. He's got a daily show, I need to listen to it more often so I can, sharpen my own sword and improve in my ability when I sit behind the mic once a week. And I really appreciate how you laid all that out, though, Rick, because and I'm not saying Texas is more special than other states and they don't count, but this is our state, right? This is where we were born and raised. It means a lot to us. And a lot of that comes from a sense of responsibility, right? And so when I think about being enthusiastic and encouraging, it's trying to inspire others to really reflect on what they can be grateful for, but also to have that energy in that mindset of to go out there and spread the gospel, but also spread that, that message of freedom so people know that now you can take control of your life to some extent, or you can have a say on how things go. And that's how our country works. I mean, that's how local communities and our state government work as well. But that's what I think is exceptional, in my opinion, but unique about America. And I think we need to be reminded of it from time to time, if not, weekly or daily, something to be grateful for, but also something to hold fast to hold on to, but to exercise, right? That's what the Constitution talks about, the free exercise of religion. And so when we think about the role that churches had, boy, they've had a lot of plates, these past 2 or 3 months, right? Trying to make sure that the government doesn't take away their right to operate, but at the same time, trying to balance how they keep things safe. A lot of churches have gone strictly online. There are some that have reopened. Many, some are not yet. Some may be rethinking some of these issues, but their role and their significance has not changed. And a lot of what you do and we do as well is trying to let churches know they've got the freedom to talk about these issues in an election year and to highlight the importance of voting.
Yeah, in fact, Jonathan, one thing, if I can, just to recommend to those churches is to do a biblical citizenship class. Take our Constitutional Live class that I do with David Barton, and we've got churches all over the country doing it. We've got about 1,000 Constitution coaches out there that are doing this now. And the reason they're doing it is so that we can take a biblical look inside the church, get people together and say, okay, let's take a biblical look at what our responsibility is in a free society, and how do I approach this in the right way and do my duty? Because just like you just said, I mean, that it really is the key. We have this sense of responsibility. In fact, we used to teach that. You said we feel that as Texans. We used to teach that all across the nation. Even back in the 50s, Eisenhower started this deal called, was part of starting Freedom's Foundation out in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania. And they used to send these really cool, full of pictures and all kinds of stuff about the founding documents to every school in America, and every kid in America would get one of these. And it had this thing in it called the Bill of Responsibilities. And the whole idea behind it was, well, yeah, we have our rights, and we love talking about our rights, but with every right comes a corresponding responsibility. If I could, I'm just going to read the preamble to it.
Yeah, please.
It says, freedom and responsibility are mutual and inseparable. We can ensure enjoyment of the one only by exercising the other. Freedom for all of us depends on responsibility by each of us. To secure and expand our liberties, therefore, we accept these responsibilities as individual members of a free society. And then they go on to list out detailed stuff that you do as a citizen. But man, that mindset, that accepting responsibility along with the rights, that's something we have got to pass on to the new generation, and frankly our own generation. Get back to this idea that I have a duty and responsibility.
Well, we're talking with Rick Green of Wall Builders. He has a daily radio show that he co-hosts with David Barton called Wall Builders Live TV program. Rick's done a lot of great things. Speaking of the next generation, Patriot Academy is an entity that you're a founder and the president of. And last time I checked, it's still in the summer. I don't know if your plans have changed with all the things going on. Tell us about Patriot Academy and what's the timing look like for you guys?
Yeah, we still do them in the summer. We do them all over the country now in state capitals. We bring in young people 16 to 25, kind of at that key age where they're developing their worldview and figuring out what do I really believe. and we basically put them in the role of a legislator. So they're on the real House floor in the real committee rooms. They bring legislation, and then throughout that week, we're teaching them a founding fathers philosophy of government, constitutional jurisdictions, biblical worldview, how to be good leaders, how to communicate well, all of that, preparing them to go into whatever field they've been called to. Most of them don't go into politics. About 10% go into politics. The rest of them are going to the pulpit or education or business or whatever it might be. But we're just training them and equipping them to be good citizens. And we started with it just being youth. Now we do a military Patriot Academy where military veterans of all ages come in, and they serve on the Senate floor here at the Texas Capitol, and they kind of get to experience what they fought for. And that's what almost all of them end up saying. They're like, wow, now I get it. This is how the system really works. And then hopefully they go home and run for office. And then we do a citizen program as well. And of course, now we're actually doing constitutional defense courses where we teach people the Constitution and how to defend themselves with a handgun, all in the same program. We also do our Constitution Coach program. That's part of Patriot Academy, and that's where we train people how to host a Constitution class, whether it's online on Zoom or at home or at their church, but just getting your friends and family. You don't have to know anything about the Constitution. You just got to know how to hit play, and then get the people in the room, hit play, pass out the workbooks, and get people studying those things. So we're doing a lot of new stuff, but our main program is still, our flagship is still that youth program that you've been so gracious to come and speak to and coach and help us with. Unfortunately, we're doing it all virtual this year. Wish we were in person. We've already done a couple of virtual ones for our ones around the country, and we've now got to do the National Academy as a virtual academy. But it's worked out okay. We've had students be able to come that couldn't otherwise come. But it's just a great way for them to learn about freedom principles and how to fight for those things.
Yeah, look, I hadn't stepped foot in the Capitol in quite some time, and our office is 2 blocks away. We've got a member of our team now that used to work with Senator Bob Hall. Last time he was in the Capitol was in March when he left that office and came to work for us, Jonathan Covey. And you're right, we have been a part of that program. What a blessing and honor to be a coach, and other members of our team have done that.
I love that Covey family, by the way. Great family. Oh, man.
They got some good folks. Great. And so we're excited about having him part of our team. But, I love being a part of that program and sometimes the dinner wrap-up. We've had so many interns as well that have come through our office that either went to Patriot Academy or, interned with us afterwards. And so please keep churning them out. And speaking of great events, I want to mention before we wrap up here that we've got an event coming up. At this point, we're doing it in person and virtually. We'll see if we have to, anything has to change for that. But for now, we're still on track to do that. September 18th and 19th is the Texas Faith, Family, and Freedom Policy Forum. This is an annual event we do. This will be our 3rd year, and Rick Green is going to be one of our speakers. Now, we're still working on the schedule and specific topics. We're going to get all that together, but we're securing speakers at this time and have a few more that actually we're going to be announcing soon that we're excited about. But Rick, you're a part of that, and we're looking forward to having you. Tim Barton was here a couple of years ago when we did the event. We had 300 people from all across the state, had national, state, and local speakers, but it continues to be important, particularly in a time period right before an election and an upcoming legislative session, for people to know what the policy issues are that are coming up and a little bit more about how they can be involved in the process. And so we're glad you're going to be a part of it.
Man, I'm looking forward to it, and I want to say to your listeners, we are at a critical juncture for the country, and supporting and being a part of Texas values is more important than it's ever been. For those that are maybe only vaguely familiar and just starting to listen to your show, they need to know. This organization and what y'all do, Jonathan, you're not only on the front lines in the legislative session, it's throughout the year in communities all across Texas, defending the Constitution, defending biblical values, defending life, defending marriage. You guys do. I don't know how y'all do as much as you do, but you're incredibly effective at it. And I just want to challenge people. Now is the time to support organizations like Texas Values. And no, Jonathan didn't ask me to say this, but I just get so frustrated with those of us that love the country and say, well, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything. Yeah. Well, that's why we have organizations like Texas Values and Patriot Academy and all these others. We're out there fighting, and we need help and we need support. And I know, Jonathan, y'all just had a great fundraising season and everything, but I know there's always room for more help and volunteers. People that'll
that's
be
exactly
boots
right
on the ground.
We need the volunteers.
Texas Values, folks, get involved.
And look, I appreciate you saying that, Rick, too, because look, the people that are part of our team, this is where their heart is. This is their calling. And so we go as far as we can. We do the best that we can, and it means so much to us. We're sold out. for these type of issues. And so the more that we can get more people plugged in, it will help us multiply. We've got 12 people now that are part of our team, and the more we grow, the more that we can be a part of these issues and have some really important impact. And we covered some great ground, and I'm going to have you back, though, Rick, because I saw in your bio that you shared the stage one time with Zig Ziglar. I want to hear about that. I have one of his cassette tapes I used to listen that I picked up from my dad, and man, what an incredible individual. So we'll bring you back for that, but check out the work that Rick is doing at Patriot Academy, also at Wall Builders, and hopefully things will hold together. You could see him in person at the Faith, Family, and Freedom Forum. Go to txvalues.org right now and get your tickets for that September 18th and 19th. Rick Green has been our guest today on the Texas Values Report. God bless you, Rick. Appreciate you.
Bless you, brother. Thanks for having me.
You bet. Wow. And look, I could spend an hour, probably a whole day with Rick talking about some of those issues. Big Supreme Court case that came down earlier this week. Go to our website, txvalues.org. The U.S. Supreme Court struck down a very common sense health and safety measure for abortion clinics, making it clear the abortion industry cares more about killing babies than protecting the health and safety of women. And we're about to close out. And look, I hope you all have a great 4th of July, okay? Last I was told, the 4th of July parade is running through my neighborhood. I couldn't be more happy about that, getting settled into my home. And so, and here I am. I'm going to get choked up. But, it's special. It is special to be an American. It's special to be a Texan. And it is special to be a Christian. And it is also an honor to be right there with all of y'all as you continue to support what we do. And we'll be continuing to do our part. And with your help, we can all continue to protect faith, family, and freedom in Texas.